A man sent money home for years, but when he returned, his mother was begging. What really happened? This story made me question something. What would you do if you were in his position?
A billionaire returned to the neighborhood he escaped 12 years ago, expecting to surprise his family with success. But instead, he found his own mother sitting by the roadside, begging for food like she had been forgotten by the world. And in that moment, one question hit him harder than anything money could protect him from. If he had been sending money home every single month, then who had been stealing his mother's life? Before we continue this story, welcome to the channel. If you're here for the first time, take a quick second to support the story. Like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from today. I always read your messages. The city of Owerri was just waking up when Michael Okoro stepped out of his luxury hotel. The morning light reflected softly on the polished black SUV waiting for him outside. Everything about his life now spoke of power, success, control. At 43, Michael was not just wealthy. He was respected, feared in business, known across continents. But none of that mattered today. Because today, he was going home. 12 years ago, he had left this country with nothing but a small bag and a promise. He remembered that promise clearly. He had stood at the doorway of their old house, looking at his mother, her tired eyes, her weak smile, and he said, "I will come back for you. I will make things better." Back then, those words felt heavy, almost impossible. But he kept them. Or at least, he thought he did. The car door opened. His driver nodded respectfully. "Good morning, sir." Michael didn't respond immediately. He looked at the city one more time, then got inside. "Let's go." As the car moved through traffic, his mind drifted backward. The early years abroad had been brutal. Cold nights, empty pockets. Days where eating once felt like a victory. But he never stopped, never slowed down. Then things changed. One opportunity turned into another. One investment multiplied. And before he knew it, he had built an empire. And through all those years, he never forgot his family. Every month, without fail, he sent money home. Not once did he miss it. At first, he sent small amounts. Then more. Then enough to completely change their lives. But there was always one problem. His mother didn't understand phones, didn't trust banks. She lived simply, quietly. So he sent everything through his younger brother, Daniel. Daniel handled everything. Or at least, that's what Michael believed. He called often. "Is Mom okay?" "Yes, she's fine." "Did she receive the money?" "Yes, she said thank you." Every time. Same answers. Same calm voice. And Michael trusted him. Because he was family. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Daniel got married, moved out, became harder to reach. And slowly, Michael stopped hearing his mother's voice completely. He asked many times. "Put her on the phone." There was always an excuse. "The network is bad. She's not around right now. I'll call you back later." But the call never came. Still, Michael believed everything was fine. Because why wouldn't it be? He had done his part. He had sent the money. He had kept his promise. Or so he thought. The car slowed down slightly as traffic thickened. Michael's eyes moved absent-mindedly toward the roadside, not really looking, just passing time. And then, something made him sit up. At first, he wasn't sure why. It was just a figure, sitting by the road. An old woman. Thin. Weak. Holding a small metal bowl. Begging. Michael frowned slightly. Something about her. He leaned closer to the window. The car moved forward slowly. His eyes narrowed. No, that couldn't be. Stop the car. His voice came out sharp, immediate. The driver reacted instantly, pulling over. But Michael was already opening the door. The sounds of the city faded around him. All he could hear was his own heartbeat. Step by step, he walked closer. Each step heavier than the last. The woman didn't notice him at first. Her head was slightly lowered, her hands shaking as she held out the bowl. Michael stopped just a few feet away. And everything inside him went still. Because the face he was looking at was not a stranger. It was his mother, Mrs. Okoro. Her clothes were worn out. Her body looked fragile, like it had been surviving, not living. For a moment, Michael couldn't breathe. "Mama." The word barely escaped his lips. The woman slowly lifted her head. Her eyes met his. And for a second, time broke. "Michael?" Her voice trembled. Her hands shook harder now. She tried to stand, but her body failed her. Michael rushed forward, catching her before she fell. No, no, don't stand, please. His voice was breaking, his hands were trembling, his entire world collapsing in real time. Why are you here? He whispered. But deep inside, another question was already screaming louder than anything else. If he had been sending money for years, then how did his mother end up here? Begging for survival, and more importantly, what had his own brother been hiding from him all this time? Michael didn't wait another second. He held his mother tightly, as if letting go for even a moment would make her disappear again. Her body felt lighter than he remembered, too light, like something had been slowly taken from her over time. Come with me, please, he said softly, trying to keep his voice steady, but it was breaking under the weight of what he was seeing. She nodded weakly, still staring at his face like she was afraid this was all a dream. People nearby had started to watch. Some whispered. Some simply stood still, sensing something heavy in the air, but Michael didn't care. Nothing else mattered now. He guided her carefully back to the car, one arm around her shoulders, protecting her like he should have done years ago. As soon as they got inside, he turned to the driver. Nearest hospital. Now, the driver didn't ask questions. The engine roared back to life, and the car sped into traffic. Inside the vehicle, silence filled the space, but it wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, suffocating. Michael held his mother's hand tightly. Her fingers were cold, fragile. She looked at him again, tears slowly forming in her eyes. My son, you came back, she whispered. Michael swallowed hard. I'm here now, Mama. I'm here. But even as he said those words, something inside him twisted painfully, because being here now didn't erase everything that had already happened. The hospital doors opened quickly as they arrived. Nurses rushed forward when they saw her condition. Within seconds, she was taken inside on a stretcher. Michael stood there for a moment, frozen, watching, helpless. The same man who controlled million-dollar decisions without blinking, now unable to control anything at all. He followed quickly, his steps heavy, his thoughts racing faster than he could keep up. After what felt like forever, he found himself sitting in the waiting area. His hands clasped together tightly, his eyes fixed on the floor. The question kept repeating in his head, over and over again. If I sent the money, where did it go? Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. Then a doctor finally walked toward him. Are you the one who brought her in? The doctor asked calmly. Michael stood up immediately. Yes, she's my mother. How is she? The doctor gave a small nod. She's weak, malnourished, exhausted. But there's no critical illness. We'll keep her under observation for now. Michael exhaled slowly, but the relief didn't last long, because those words only confirmed something worse. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't an accident. This had been happening for a long time. You can see her soon, the doctor added before walking away. Michael nodded, but his mind was already somewhere else. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen for a second, then he tapped a name. Daniel. The call rang, once, twice, 3 times, no answer. Michael's jaw tightened slightly. He tried again, this time, straight to voicemail. He stared at the phone, his grip tightening. Pick up, he muttered under his breath. But the call never came. He leaned back in the chair, his eyes closing for a brief moment. Memories started flashing through his mind. Every conversation, every reassurance, every don't worry, she's fine. And now, this. His eyes opened slowly. Something inside him was shifting, breaking, rebuilding into something colder, sharper. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was the beginning of understanding. A nurse approached him gently. You can come in now. Michael stood up immediately and followed her. The room was quiet, machines hummed softly, and there she was. Lying on the bed, his mother. She looked even smaller now, fragile against the white sheets. Michael walked closer slowly, almost afraid. He pulled a chair and sat beside her. For a moment, he just looked at her. No words, just silence. Then quietly, he reached out and held her hand again. I'm sorry, he whispered. He didn't even know exactly what he was apologizing for. Maybe for believing everything was okay. Maybe for not coming sooner. Maybe for trusting the wrong person. A few hours later, she finally woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the light. Then she turned her head. and saw him, sitting right there, watching her. "Michael," she whispered again, softer this time. He leaned closer immediately. "Yes, Mama, I'm here." She lifted her hand weakly, touching his face gently, as if confirming he was real. Tears filled her eyes. "I thought I would never see you again." That sentence hit him harder than anything else. Never see you again. How long had she felt like that? How alone had she been? Michael forced a small smile. "You're not alone anymore. I promise." But she looked at him carefully. Something uncertain in her eyes. Something that didn't match his version of the story. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke slowly. "My son, how did you manage to come back?" Michael blinked slightly, confused. "What do you mean?" She looked away briefly, then back at him. "Daniel told me things were not going well for you. He said you were struggling, that's why you stopped sending money." Michael froze. Completely. His mind went blank for a second. Then the words hit him all at once. "Stopped sending money." Slowly, he shook his head. "No," he said quietly, his voice low, controlled, but trembling underneath. "I never stopped." The room fell into silence again. But this time, it felt different, heavier, darker, because now, the truth wasn't just a question anymore. It was starting to reveal itself. And whatever Daniel had done, it was far worse than Michael had imagined. Michael stared at his mother, searching her face, hoping, somehow, that he had misunderstood. But the confusion in her eyes was real, too real to ignore. "Mama, what do you mean I stopped sending money?" he asked slowly, leaning closer. His voice was calm, but underneath, something dangerous was building. She looked at him, her hands resting weakly on the blanket. "It has been a long time, my son," she said softly. "About 3 years now, since anything came." 3 years. The number echoed in his head like a gunshot. Michael leaned back slightly, his mind racing. 3 years? That didn't make sense. It couldn't. Because he knew exactly what he had done. Every transfer, every confirmation, every month, he had never missed it, not once. "No," he said again, firmer this time. "Mama, I've been sending money every month. I never stopped. Not even for a single month." Her brows slowly pulled together. Confusion turned into something else. Fear. "But Daniel told me," she began, then stopped, her voice trembling. Michael's jaw tightened. Of course. Daniel. Everything was pointing to him now. Every excuse, every missed call, every delay, every lie. Michael stood up slowly and walked a few steps away from the bed. He needed space, needed to breathe, because what was happening right now was bigger than anger. This was betrayal. The kind that cuts deeper because it comes from someone you trust without question. He turned back to her. "Mama, after Daniel moved out, did you still see him often?" She shook her head weakly. "No, not really. After he got married, things changed. He stopped coming around. Sometimes, months would pass." Michael closed his eyes for a brief moment. That was it. The timeline matched perfectly. The moment Daniel left the house, the money stopped reaching their mother. Which meant only one thing. Daniel had been taking it, all of it, for years. Michael opened his eyes again, but now, they were different. Colder, focused, controlled. "Mama, did he ever give you anything at all? Even small money?" She hesitated. Then slowly shook her head. "Sometimes, a little. But not like before. Not enough to live, not enough to live." Michael felt something inside him crack. While he was building a life abroad, working himself to exhaustion, sending everything he could to make sure his family would never suffer again, his own mother had been struggling to survive. Alone, hungry, forgotten, he clenched his fists tightly. But he didn't explode. Not yet. Because now, this wasn't just about emotion. This was about truth. And he needed all of it. He walked back to the chair, and sat down beside her again, his voice softer now. "Mama, there's something else I need to ask you." She nodded slowly. 2 years ago, I sent Daniel a large amount of money," he continued, "for land, and for building a house. A good house. For you." Her eyes widened slightly. "A house?" Michael nodded. "Yes. He showed me pictures, the land, the construction, everything. I believed you were already living there." She stared at him in silence. Then slowly, tears began to form in her eyes again. "My son, she whispered. I have never seen any house. That was the moment everything inside Michael went still again. No anger, no confusion, just clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. The pictures were fake. The house didn't exist. And Daniel had been lying about everything. Michael leaned back slowly, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the room. He wasn't just thinking anymore. He was connecting pieces. Building the full picture. Daniel didn't just take the monthly money. He took the house money too. He created fake progress, fake updates, fake images. And for years, he played the role of a responsible son. While their mother suffered in silence, Michael let out a slow breath. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was calculated, planned, sustained. He picked up his phone again. Daniel. He called. The line rang, and rang, and rang. No answer. Michael ended the call slowly. Then he tried again. Still nothing. This time, he didn't react immediately. He simply stared at the screen for a few seconds, before placing the phone down gently. Okay, he whispered to himself. If Daniel wouldn't answer the phone, then he would answer in person. Michael stood up again and looked at his mother. His expression softened slightly. Mama, you don't need to worry about anything anymore. I'm here now. She nodded weakly, but her eyes were still filled with pain. I thought, you forgot about me, she said quietly. Those words hit him deeper than anything else. Forgot about me. He shook his head immediately. Never. I could never forget you. But now he understood why she believed that. Because someone had made sure she would. Michael walked to the window and looked outside. The city moved as usual. Cars. People. Noise. Life continuing like nothing was wrong. But for him, everything had changed. Because somewhere out there, his own brother was living a life built on lies. On stolen money. On their mother's suffering. And Michael knew one thing for sure now. He wasn't going to let this end quietly. Not this time. He turned back toward the bed, his eyes steady. Focused. There was no more confusion, no more doubt, only one goal. Find Daniel, and make him tell the truth. Because whatever he had done, it was about to come crashing down. Michael didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. He sat alone in his hotel room, the city lights glowing faintly through the curtains, his phone resting on the table in front of him. Every few minutes, he picked it up, checked it. No missed calls, no messages, nothing from Daniel. It was like he had disappeared. And that silence, it wasn't normal. It wasn't innocent. It felt intentional. Like someone who already knew the truth had been discovered, and was trying to hide. Michael leaned back slowly, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. His mind replayed everything again. Every conversation, every transfer, every excuse. And now, it all sounded different. Every "don't worry, she's fine" now felt like a lie carefully repeated until it became believable. His jaw tightened. You had years to tell me the truth, he muttered quietly. But you didn't. He reached for his phone again, then stopped. Because suddenly, a different thought crossed his mind. Daniel might ignore his calls. He might avoid him. But there was one thing Daniel would never ignore: opportunity. Michael sat up slowly, his eyes sharpening, because he remembered something important. 2 years ago, he had sent Daniel money to start a business. An event planning company. Daniel had been excited, grateful. He talked about growing it, expanding it, becoming successful. Michael had supported him fully, trusted him, which meant, if that business still existed, Daniel would still be there. Still operating, still reachable. And if there was one thing businessmen never ignore, it was a big client, a big deal, a big opportunity. Michael picked up his phone again. But this time, he didn't call Daniel. He called someone else. I need a favor, he said calmly when the line connected. Find me the best event planner in the city. Book a meeting. Tell them it's a high-value client. He paused for a second, then added quietly, make sure it's Daniel Okoro. The next evening, across the city, Daniel sat inside his office. The space looked decent, clean, organized. A few decorations. A few framed photos of past events. On the surface, everything looked normal, successful even, but appearances could lie. His phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up and read the message. A new client. Big event. Private meeting at a high-end restaurant. Daniel leaned back slightly, thinking. A small smile formed on his face. Finally, he murmured. Business had been slow lately. Opportunities like this didn't come often, and he wasn't in a position to refuse. Not now. Not with everything going on. All right, he said to himself. Let's see what this is about. That evening, the restaurant was quiet. Soft music played in the background, dim lights, clean tables. The kind of place where important conversations happened. Daniel arrived on time, dressed well. Confident. Or at least, trying to be. He looked around briefly before walking toward the reserved table. A man in a suit was already seated there. Not Michael. Someone else. Good evening, the man said politely as Daniel approached. Good evening, Daniel replied, sitting down. My client will be joining us shortly. Daniel nodded. No problem. They exchanged a few words about the supposed event. Details, budget, expectations. Daniel relaxed slightly. Everything seemed normal, professional. But then, a few minutes later, the man's phone rang. He glanced at it, then stood up. Excuse me, I'll be right back, he said. Sure, Daniel replied casually. And just like that, Daniel was left alone at the table. A few seconds passed. Then, he felt it. A presence behind him. A voice. Good evening, Daniel. The moment he heard it, his body froze. Completely. Slowly, very slowly, he turned around. And when his eyes met the man standing behind him, everything inside him dropped. Michael, his voice came out low, uncertain. Michael didn't smile, didn't move quickly. He simply walked forward, pulled out the chair, and sat down across from him. Calm, controlled, but his eyes said everything. You've been avoiding my calls, Michael said quietly. Daniel swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. I've been busy, he started. Michael raised his hand slightly, and Daniel stopped immediately. Don't, Michael said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, the kind of tone that didn't need volume to carry weight. Silence fell between them, heavy, uncomfortable. Then slowly, Michael reached into his pocket and placed his phone on the table. I want you to listen to something, he said. He tapped the screen, and a voice filled the silence. Daniel's voice. Don't worry, she's fine. I just saw her not long ago. Daniel's face changed instantly. His eyes widened slightly. His breathing shifted. Michael didn't look away. I have many of these, he said calmly. The recording stopped, and the silence that followed was heavier than before. Michael leaned forward slightly, his gaze locked onto Daniel. Do you want to tell me what I saw? He asked quietly. Daniel didn't respond, so Michael continued. I found our mother, he said slowly. On the roadside. Each word landed harder than the last. She was begging. Daniel's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. She was hungry. Weak. Alone. Michael's voice didn't rise, but the emotion behind it was impossible to ignore. And all this time, he added softly, I was sending money. Now his eyes hardened. Every month, he leaned even closer. So tell me, Daniel, his voice dropped to almost a whisper. Where did the money go? Daniel's hands trembled slightly under the table. His mind racing, his heart pounding. Because in that moment, there was no escape left, no excuses, no lies strong enough to hold anymore. And for the first time in years, Daniel was about to face the truth he had been running from. Daniel's fingers tightened under the table. His eyes dropped for a moment, then slowly lifted back up to meet Michael's gaze. But he couldn't hold it for long. There was too much in those eyes. Too much anger, too much disappointment, too much truth. He started, but his voice failed him. He swallowed hard. It's not what you think. Michael didn't react immediately. He simply leaned back slightly, studying him. Calm, controlled. Dangerous. Then explain it, he said quietly. Daniel nodded slowly, his breathing uneven now. Things didn't go the way I planned, he said. Michael's expression didn't change. That's not an explanation. The pressure in the air grew heavier. Daniel ran a hand over his face, buying time, trying to find words that could somehow make this less terrible than it was. But there were no easy words left. Not anymore. After I got married, he began slowly. Everything changed. Michael said nothing. But his eyes didn't move. At first, it was fine, Daniel continued. We were okay. I was handling things, taking care of responsibilities, sending money to Mama, like you asked. Michael's jaw tightened slightly. But then, Daniel paused. His voice dropped. I started having problems. What kind of problems? Michael asked. Daniel hesitated again. Then finally, he said it. Money problems. Michael let out a slow breath through his nose. Explain. Daniel looked down at the table. I made some bad decisions, he admitted. I got into business deals that didn't work out. I thought I could grow the money you were sending, invest it, multiply it. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. But it didn't work, Daniel continued quickly. I lost money, a lot of it, and then I tried to recover it, but it only got worse. Michael leaned forward slightly. So you used the money I sent for Mama to fix your mistakes? Daniel didn't answer immediately. That silence was the answer. Michael nodded slowly. Once. Continue. Daniel's voice trembled now. At first, I thought it was temporary. I told myself I would replace it, that I would fix everything before you noticed. But you didn't, Michael said coldly. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, I couldn't. The tension in the room was suffocating now. So instead, Michael continued, you kept lying. Daniel's eyes filled with frustration. I didn't know what else to do, he said suddenly, his voice rising. Michael didn't react to the volume. Daniel exhaled sharply, trying to calm himself. You don't understand, he added more quietly. Things got out of control. I had debts. People were pressuring me. If I didn't pay, it wouldn't just affect me. Michael's expression hardened. Who? Daniel hesitated. My family, he said. My wife, my children. Michael's eyes flickered slightly. And Mama? He asked. That question hit harder than anything else. Daniel looked away. I thought she would be okay, he said weakly. Michael stared at him in disbelief. You thought she would be okay? Daniel shook his head quickly. No, I thought I could fix everything before it got that bad, but it did get that bad, Michael said quietly. Daniel's voice broke slightly. I didn't know she had nothing. I didn't know it got that bad. Michael leaned back slowly. You didn't know, because you didn't check. Daniel said nothing. Because it was true. He didn't check. He didn't go see her. He didn't ask enough questions. He just assumed, and kept taking. Michael let out a long breath, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. And the house? He asked. Daniel froze again. Michael tilted his head slightly. The land, the construction, the pictures you sent me. His voice dropped lower. Was any of that real? Daniel's silence stretched longer this time. Until finally, he shook his head. No, Michael didn't move, didn't blink, didn't speak. But something inside him shifted again. Not shock, not anger, something colder, final. You created fake progress, Michael said slowly. Daniel nodded weakly. You showed me a house that never existed. Another nod. And all that money. Michael paused. You took it. Daniel's eyes closed briefly. Yes. The word landed like a weight on the table between them. For a few seconds neither of them spoke. Then Michael stood up slowly. Daniel looked up immediately, panic flickering in his eyes. Michael, please, he said quickly. I can fix this. I'll pay it back. I just need time. Michael raised his hand again, and Daniel stopped. You had years, Michael said quietly. That was it. No shouting, no explosion, just that sentence. And somehow, it felt heavier than anything else. Michael looked down at him, his expression unreadable now. I trusted you, he added. Daniel lowered his head. I trusted you with her. That one hurt more. Because money could be replaced. But trust, once broken like this, didn't come back the same. Michael took a step back. This isn't over, he said calmly. Daniel's heart sank. Because he knew what that meant. This wasn't just about confrontation anymore. This was about consequences. Real ones. Michael turned and walked away without looking back, leaving Daniel sitting there, alone, surrounded by silence. And for the first time in years, the weight of everything he had done was finally catching up to him. Michael didn't go back to the hotel immediately. He walked out of the restaurant and stood still for a moment, the night air brushing lightly against his face. The city was alive around him, cars passing, people talking, lights glowing, but none of it reached him. His mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker. He had come back expecting to reconnect, to rebuild, maybe even to feel proud of what he had achieved. But now, all he felt was a deep, heavy weight in his chest. Because the truth wasn't just painful, it was ugly. His own brother had taken everything meant to protect their mother, and used it to cover his own mistakes. Michael closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, sharper now. This wasn't just about anger anymore. This was about responsibility and justice. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need everything," he said calmly when the line connected. "Bank records, transfers, account access. I want a full breakdown of every transaction I've made in the last 5 years." He paused, then added, "And I want to know exactly where that money went." On the other side of the city, Daniel was still sitting in the restaurant. He hadn't moved. His hands rested on the table, but they were shaking slightly now. His breathing was uneven. The moment Michael walked away, something inside him collapsed. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't something he could talk his way out of. This wasn't a small lie. This was years of deception, years of damage. And now, it was all exposed. He leaned back slowly, staring at the empty chair across from him. "What have I done?" he whispered to himself. Back at the hospital the next morning, Michael stood beside his mother's bed. She looked a little stronger now, still weak, but better than before. He helped her sit up gently, adjusting the pillow behind her. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. She gave a small smile. "Better, now that you're here." That answer cut deep again, because it reminded him, she hadn't needed luxury. She hadn't needed millions. She just needed presence. Care. Truth. Michael sat down beside her. "Mama, there are some things I need to take care of today," he said carefully. "But I promise you, everything will change. You will never go through that again." She nodded slowly, trusting him completely. And that trust meant everything. A few hours later, Michael stepped out of the hospital and got into the car. His phone buzzed almost immediately. A message. The report was ready. He opened it. Line by line, transfer by transfer. Every amount he had sent, clearly recorded, and next to it, the destination. Daniel's account, but it didn't stop there. The money didn't stay. It moved. Again. And again. Different accounts, different withdrawals, large cash removals, unexplained transfers. Michael's eyes darkened slightly as he continued reading. Then he saw something else. Repeated payments. Same account, same name. Over and over again. He tapped the line and opened the details. The name belonged to a private security company. Michael frowned slightly. Security? Why would Daniel be paying a security company with that kind of money? And not small amounts. Consistent. Heavy payments, for years. Something about that didn't sit right. At all. "Find out everything about this company," Michael said quietly to the driver. "Yes, sir." The car turned sharply at the next corner. Because now, this was getting bigger. Much bigger than just stolen money. Later that afternoon, Michael sat inside a quiet office. Across from him sat an older man. Calm, observant. His father. Mr. Okoro had arrived earlier that day after hearing what happened. And now, he was listening, carefully. Michael placed the documents on the table. "This is where the money went," he said. His father leaned forward, adjusting his glasses slightly as he looked through the papers. His expression didn't change much at first, but slowly, it hardened. "This is not just mismanagement," he said after a moment. Michael nodded. "I know." His father looked up at him. "There's a pattern here." Michael leaned forward slightly. "I saw it too. The same company, repeated payments." His father tapped the document lightly. "This kind of structure, it's organized, planned, not random." Michael's eyes narrowed. "You think Daniel is involved in something else?" His father didn't answer immediately. Then slowly, he said, "I think your brother may not be the only one involved." Silence filled the room. Because that possibility changed everything. Michael leaned back slowly, processing it. If Daniel was just reacting to bad decisions, that was one thing. But if someone else was influencing him, controlling him, then this situation was far more dangerous than it seemed. Michael stood up and walked toward the window, his hands resting behind his back. The city stretched out in front of him. Calm. Ordinary. But beneath that calm, something was wrong. Very wrong. He turned back slowly. "We find out who's behind this," he said firmly. His father nodded. "And we end it." Because now, this was no longer just about family, It was about uncovering something hidden. Something that had already destroyed too much. And whatever it wasn't going to stay buried any longer. The room felt smaller the longer Michael stood there. The documents on the table were no longer just numbers. They were proof. Evidence. A trail that led somewhere deeper than he had expected. His father remained seated, calm but focused, his eyes moving slowly across each page again. This company, he said quietly, tapping one section. It's not ordinary. Michael turned slightly. What do you mean? His father looked up. Private security companies don't receive payments like this unless they are providing something specific. Michael's expression tightened. Specific how? His father paused for a moment before answering. Control, protection, or intimidation. The last word lingered in the air. Michael felt it settle heavily in his chest, because suddenly, everything Daniel had said started to sound different. The fear, the pressure, the debts. What if it wasn't just bad decisions? What if someone had been pulling strings behind him? Michael grabbed the file and flipped through it again, faster this time. His mind connecting pieces rapidly now. The payments started about 3 years ago, he muttered. That's the same time Mama stopped receiving money. His father nodded slowly. Exactly. Michael's jaw tightened. That couldn't be a coincidence. It meant something happened 3 years ago. Something that changed everything. Find their office? Michael said immediately, turning toward the door. His father stood up calmly. We don't rush blindly, he said. We think. Michael stopped, just for a second. Then exhaled slowly, forcing himself to slow down. His father stepped closer. If someone is involved, we need to understand who they are first. Walking in without knowing could make things worse. Michael nodded slightly. He didn't like it. But he knew it was right. Later that evening, they sat together again, this time with more information. The company had a name. A location. A history. On paper, it looked legitimate. Security services. Property protection. Event security. Nothing unusual, but the financial records told a different story. Large cash flows. Unusual contracts. Payments that didn't match the services listed. Michael leaned forward, his fingers pressing lightly against the table. They've been taking money regularly, but there's no clear service linked to it. His father nodded, which means the service is not on paper. Michael looked up. And Daniel was paying them, he added. Silence followed. Then Michael spoke again, his voice lower now. We need to talk to him again. His father didn't argue. Because they both knew, Daniel hadn't told them everything, not yet. That same night, Daniel sat alone in his house. The lights were on, but the room felt dark, heavy. His phone lay on the table in front of him. He hadn't touched it in hours. He knew Michael would come back. That this wasn't over. And that thought alone made his chest tighten. His wife walked into the room slowly. She had been watching him from a distance all evening. You haven't eaten, she said softly. Daniel didn't respond. She stepped closer. What's wrong? He laughed quietly. But there was no humor in it. Everything, he said. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? Daniel finally looked up at her. His eyes were tired. Heavy. He found out, he said. Her expression changed instantly. Michael? Daniel nodded slowly. The room went silent again. Then she spoke, her voice lower now. What did you tell him? Daniel looked away. Some of it. Her brows tightened. Some of it? Daniel exhaled slowly. I told him about the money. The losses. The lies. She crossed her arms slightly. But not everything. It wasn't a question. Daniel didn't answer. Because he couldn't. She stepped closer, her voice firmer now. You need to tell him the truth. All of it. Daniel shook his head immediately. No, Daniel, no, he repeated, louder this time. You don't understand. She stared at him. Then explain it to me, she said. Daniel stood up suddenly, pacing a few steps away. His hands ran through his hair, frustration building. If I tell him everything, it won't just affect me, he said. It will affect all of us. Her expression hardened slightly. We are already affected. Daniel stopped. That hit him. Hard. But he still shook his head. You don't know what they're capable of, he said quietly. The moment those words left his mouth, the air shifted. His wife's eyes narrowed slightly. They? Daniel froze. He hadn't meant to say that. But it was too late. She stepped closer. Who are you talking about? Daniel looked at her, then away again. Silence stretched between them. Then finally, he whispered, "It's not just the money." Her heart started beating faster. Daniel, he swallowed hard. "They've been watching me," he said. "For years." The words landed like a stone in still water. "They control everything," he continued. "My accounts, my movements, even the people I talk to." She stepped back slightly, shock spreading across her face. "Why?" she asked. Daniel laughed again, but this time it sounded broken. "Because I let them in," he said. The room felt colder now, because suddenly, this wasn't just about lies anymore. This was about something far more dangerous, far more serious, and far from over. Across the city, Michael stood by the window again, his phone in his hand. He had just received a message, a location, Daniel's house. He stared at it for a moment, then grabbed his coat. Because one thing was clear now. The truth Daniel had told him was only the surface. And whatever was hiding underneath, he was about to uncover it. Michael didn't wait until morning. The moment he got the address, he moved. The city lights blurred past as the car cut through the night, faster than before, sharper, more urgent. His father sat beside him, silent, watching. Neither of them spoke. Because both of them understood, this was the moment everything would finally come together. The car slowed as they approached the house. It wasn't large, not luxurious, but it was well kept. Quiet, too quiet. Michael stepped out first. His footsteps were steady, controlled, but inside, everything was ready to explode. He walked straight to the door, and knocked. Once. Twice. The sound echoed through the silence of the night. Inside, Daniel froze. His heart dropped instantly. He didn't need to look through the window to know who it was. "It's him," he whispered. His wife looked at him, fear already building in her eyes. "Then open the door," she said softly. Daniel hesitated. Because once that door opened, there was no going back. The knock came again. Stronger this time. Daniel took a slow breath and walked forward. His hand touched the handle. For a moment, he just stood there. Then finally, he opened it. Michael stood there. Still. Silent. But his presence filled the entire doorway. Behind him, their father. Daniel's throat tightened instantly. Michael didn't respond. He simply walked inside. No invitation, no hesitation. Daniel stepped aside without saying a word. The door closed behind them, and the air inside the house changed. Heavy, thick, unavoidable. Michael looked around slowly, his eyes scanning everything, not judging the house, but measuring something else. Truth, fear, signs. Then he turned back to Daniel. "We're done talking in pieces," he said calmly. His voice was low, but final. "I want everything." Daniel swallowed hard. His wife stood a few steps behind him now, tense, watching every movement. Michael stepped closer. "You said they were watching you," he continued. "You said it wasn't just money." He paused. "Start explaining." Silence stretched. Daniel looked at his father, then back at Michael. His hands were shaking now. Because he knew, this was the moment he had been avoiding for years. And there was no more running left. He took a slow breath. "It started 3 years ago," he said quietly. Michael didn't interrupt. Daniel continued. "I had already lost money, a lot of it. I was desperate. I didn't know what to do anymore." His voice was unsteady. "That's when I met them." Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. "At first, they seemed helpful," Daniel said. "They said they could fix things, help me recover, protect me from the people I owed." His wife closed her eyes briefly. She already knew where this was going. "But nothing is free," Daniel added bitterly. Michael's jaw tightened. What did they want? Daniel looked down. "Control." The word hung in the air. "They started with small things," he continued. "Access to my accounts. Oversight. Then they took more. Decisions. Transactions. Everything." Michael's voice dropped lower. "And the money I sent?" Daniel's eyes filled with regret. They knew about it. They saw it as an opportunity. Michael didn't move. "So they took it," Daniel said. "Not just took it," Michael added quietly. Used it. Daniel nodded weakly. They said it would cover my debts. That I had no choice. And you believed them? I didn't have options. Daniel snapped suddenly, his voice breaking under pressure. You weren't here. I was dealing with everything alone. The words hit the room hard. But Michael didn't react emotionally. He stayed calm. Too calm. And Mama? He asked. Daniel's voice dropped again. They didn't care about her. Michael stepped closer. And you? Daniel couldn't answer. Because there was no answer that could fix that. Silence filled the room again. Then Michael spoke slowly. You let them take everything. Daniel's eyes dropped. You let them destroy her life. No response. Michael took a deep breath, then turned slightly toward his father. That was the signal. His father stepped forward calmly. We already have the records, he said. The transactions. The payments to the company. The pattern. Daniel looked up sharply. And tomorrow morning, his father continued, those records go to the authorities. The words landed like a final blow. Daniel's face drained of color. No, he said immediately. You don't understand. Michael cut him off. No, you don't understand. His voice was still calm, but now there was steel in it. This doesn't end quietly. Daniel's breathing became faster. They won't let this go, he said. You don't know who they are. Michael stepped even closer. I don't care who they are. The room went completely still. Because whatever they are, he added slowly, they end now. For the first time, Daniel saw something in his brother's eyes that made him realize, this wasn't just anger, this was final. There would be no backing down, no compromise, no silence. Michael turned toward the door, but before he left, he stopped, and looked back at Daniel one last time. You made your choices, he said quietly. And now, you face them. The door opened, then closed. And just like that, everything Daniel had built on lies started collapsing. The next morning came faster than expected. Authorities moved quickly. The investigation opened immediately. The security company, exposed. Their operations, uncovered. Fraud, extortion, financial control. Years of hidden activity, brought into the light. Daniel was taken in for questioning. But this time, he didn't resist. Because deep down, he knew this was the only way it could end. Days later, the case concluded. Those responsible were arrested. Charges were filed. Assets traced. Money recovered where possible. Justice, finally moving forward. But inside the family, there was no celebration, only silence. A different kind of silence now. One that came after truth. After pain. After everything had been laid bare. Michael stood beside his mother in their new home days later. A quiet place. Safe. Peaceful. She looked around slowly, her eyes filled with tears. My son, she whispered. Is this really ours? Michael smiled softly. Yes, Mama. She reached for his hand, and held it tightly. This time, he didn't let go. Because now he understood something clearly. Money could build houses, but presence was what truly built a home. He looked down at her gently. I'm not leaving again, he said quietly. And this time, it wasn't just a promise. It was a decision. A final one. Because after everything they had lost, this was where it all began again. And somewhere in the silence of that new beginning, there was finally something they hadn't felt in years. Peace.